Good evening. In the ever-churning world of royal intrigue, where whispers can echo louder than official statements, a new controversy has emerged, one that sits at the intersection of family tension, public fascination, and the fragile line between truth and speculation. The latest storm centers on a provocative question now circulating across tabloids, social media, and commentary platforms. Was there ever a Lilibet hoax? At the heart of this unfolding narrative are renewed claims, unverified, emotionally charged, and deeply controversial, reportedly linked to extended members of Meghan Markle's family. These claims, which have not been substantiated by credible evidence, are stirring debate not because of their proof, but because of their implications. They touch on identity, trust, and the increasingly complex relationship between Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, and the institutions and families they've distanced themselves from. This is not just another royal rumor. It's a story about perception, credibility, and the consequences of living a life that exists simultaneously in private reality and public imagination. The idea of a so-called Lilibet hoax did not emerge from official channels or investigative journalism. Instead, it appears to have grown out of commentary, some of it deeply speculative, from individuals claiming proximity to Meghan Markle's past. In recent months, a few voices connected to Meghan's estranged family have resurfaced with renewed accusations. These claims suggest inconsistencies in the public narrative surrounding the birth and early life of Lilibet Diana, the daughter of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. However, none of these claims have been supported by verifiable documentation or credible reporting, and they remain firmly in the realm of speculation. Still, in the digital age, speculation can travel fast and often takes on a life of its own. There's a reason stories like this capture attention so quickly. The British royal family and those connected to it occupy a unique space in global culture. They are at once symbols, celebrities, and subjects of intense scrutiny. When Prince Harry and Meghan Markle stepped back from royal duties and relocated to the United States, they didn't step out of the spotlight. They redefined their relationship with it. Their openness in interviews, documentaries, and public appearances has invited both support and skepticism. For supporters, they are figures of independence and resilience. For critics, their narrative invites questions, sometimes fair, sometimes intrusive. In that environment, even the most tenuous claim can ignite widespread discussion. One of the most complicated aspects of this situation is the role of family, particularly estranged family members. Meghan Markle has long had a strained relationship with parts of her paternal family. Over the years, this has played out publicly, with interviews, statements, and counterstatements creating a backdrop of tension. When claims emerge from within that circle, they carry a certain emotional weight. But they also require careful scrutiny. Family disputes, especially those played out in public, are rarely neutral. They are shaped by personal history, unresolved conflict, and sometimes the desire for attention or validation. That doesn't automatically invalidate every claim, but it does make context essential. Prince Harry has consistently taken a protective stance when it comes to his family, particularly his children. In interviews and public appearances, he has emphasized the importance of privacy and safety, especially given his own experiences growing up under intense media scrutiny. If anything, the emergence of rumors like this reinforces the very concerns he has voiced. The idea that deeply personal aspects of his family life could become the subject of public speculation is precisely the kind of intrusion he has sought to avoid. At the same time, Harry's decision to share parts of his life story, including deeply personal struggles, has contributed to a dynamic where the boundary between public and private is constantly negotiated. Part of what makes this story particularly sensitive is the name itself. Lilibet was famously the childhood nickname of Queen Elizabeth II, a deeply personal moniker used only by those closest to her. When Prince Harry and Meghan Markle chose the name for their daughter, it was widely interpreted as a tribute. For many, it symbolized continuity and connection, even amid tension between the Sussexes and the royal institution. That symbolic weight adds another layer to the controversy. Any suggestion, however unfounded, that there is something inauthentic about the child or her story risks being seen not just as a personal attack, but as a challenge to that symbolic gesture. In situations like this, the role of media, both traditional and digital, is critical. Responsible journalism requires verification, context, and a commitment to distinguishing fact from rumor. Unfortunately, the speed of modern information ecosystems doesn't always allow for that level of care. Social media platforms in particular can amplify claims before they are examined. Algorithms reward engagement, not accuracy. As a result, sensational narratives often rise to prominence regardless of their credibility. That doesn't mean people should ignore emerging stories, but it does mean they should approach them with a critical eye. Lost in the swirl of headlines and speculation are the real people at the center of the story. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are public figures, but they are also parents. Their children, including LILIBET, are not public figures in the same sense and have no control over the narratives that form around them. Speculation about a child's identity or existence crosses a line that many would consider deeply personal. It raises questions not just about truth, but about ethics. What is fair game for public discussion? And where should the line be drawn? These are not easy questions, but they are necessary ones. As with many royal-related controversies, public reaction has been sharply divided. Some individuals treat the claims with skepticism, pointing out the lack of evidence and the questionable sources. Others, however, view them as part of a broader pattern of perceived inconsistencies. This divide reflects a larger phenomenon, the polarization of public opinion around Harry and Meghan. For some, they represent a break from tradition and a challenge to entrenched systems. For others, they symbolize controversy and contradiction. In that context, even unverified claims can become part of a larger narrative, one that people interpret through their existing beliefs. Amid all the speculation, it's important to return to what is known and what is not. There is no credible, verified evidence supporting the idea of a LILIBET hoax. Official records, public statements, and reputable reporting all affirm the existence and identity of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's daughter. The claims currently circulating originate from sources that have not provided substantiated proof. As such, they should be treated with caution. That doesn't mean the conversation will disappear. But it does mean that for now, it remains firmly in the realm of rumor. Stories like this reveal something deeper about the modern media landscape. They show how quickly narratives can form, how powerfully they can spread, and how difficult they can be to contain once they take hold. They also highlight the unique position of figures like Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, individuals who are both part of a historic institution and participants in a contemporary global media environment. Navigating that space is not simple. Every choice, what to share, what to withhold, how to respond, carries consequences. The LILIBET hoax narrative, as it currently stands, is less a confirmed story and more a reflection of the world in which it exists. A world where information moves fast, boundaries are blurred, and public figures live under constant observation. Whether the claims fade away or evolve into something more substantial will depend on evidence, something that so far has not materialized. Until then, the story serves as a reminder of the importance of skepticism, empathy, and responsibility in how we consume and share information. Because behind every headline, there are real lives, and not every story deserves to be believed simply because it is told. If the first wave of the LILIBET hoax narrative was driven by fringe commentary, the second wave has been fueled by something far more powerful: repetition. In today's digital landscape, a claim doesn't need to be proven to feel real. It only needs to be repeated often enough, in enough places, by enough voices. This is the echo chamber effect. A single speculative remark, once posted, is picked up by another account, then reframed in a video, then debated in a comment section, then turned into a headline by a low-credibility outlet. Before long, the original claim, however thin, has been transformed into something that appears widespread, even credible, not because it has been verified, but because it has been amplified. In the case of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, this effect is particularly pronounced. Their global visibility ensures that any narrative, supportive or critical, can travel quickly across borders, languages, and platforms. And once a narrative takes hold, it becomes surprisingly resistant to correction. One of the most striking aspects of this controversy is the absence of a direct response from Harry and Meghan. In an era where public figures often rush to address rumors in real time, their silence stands out. But silence can mean different things. It can be a strategic decision, a refusal to dignify unverified claims with attention. Engaging with every rumor would not only be exhausting, it could also legitimize speculation that would otherwise fade away. At the same time, silence can create a vacuum. And in that vacuum, others step in to fill the gaps, with theories, interpretations, and sometimes misinformation. For critics, the lack of response is framed as suspicious. For supporters, it is seen as dignified restraint. Both interpretations say more about the audience than the individuals at the center of the story. To understand why a claim like this gains traction, it helps to look at the broader pattern of public trust, or more accurately, distrust. Over the past decade, confidence in institutions, media, government, even traditional authority figures has eroded in many parts of the world. This has created fertile ground for alternative narratives, some of which challenge official accounts without necessarily providing evidence. Within that context, the lives of high-profile individuals become open to reinterpretation. Official statements are questioned. Personal stories are dissected. Even moments that would once have been considered private are subjected to public analysis. Harry and Meghan, by stepping away from the traditional royal framework, have positioned themselves outside the institutional structures that might otherwise shield them. That independence has given them freedom, but it has also exposed them to a different kind of scrutiny. In many modern controversies, visual evidence plays a central role. Photographs, videos, and public appearances are analyzed in minute detail, often by individuals with no direct knowledge of the situation. In this case, some online commentators have pointed to the relative scarcity of public images of LILIBET as a reason for suspicion. But this interpretation overlooks a crucial factor: intention. From the beginning, Harry and Meghan have been selective about what they share of their children's lives. This is not unusual among public figures who have experienced intense media attention. In fact, it reflects a broader trend among celebrities seeking to protect their families from the pressures of visibility. The absence of frequent images is not evidence of anything in itself. It is a choice. But in an environment shaped by expectation, that choice can be misinterpreted. Another layer to this story involves the way personal narratives are constructed and reconstructed over time. Both Harry and Meghan have spoken publicly about their experiences, offering insights into their relationship, their departure from royal duties, and their life in the United States. These narratives are deeply personal, but they are also part of a public conversation. As with any story told over time, details can be emphasized, reframed, or interpreted differently by different audiences. Supporters see consistency and courage. Critics look for contradictions. Into that space, external claims, like those surrounding the so-called LILIBET hoax, can be inserted, often as attempts to challenge or undermine the existing narrative. But without evidence, such insertions remain speculative. Why do some people accept unverified claims while others reject them? The answer lies in part in psychology. People are more likely to believe information that aligns with their existing views. This is known as confirmation bias. If someone already feels skeptical about Harry and Meghan, they may be more inclined to accept claims that cast doubt on their story. Conversely, those who view the couple sympathetically are more likely to dismiss such claims outright. This dynamic creates parallel realities, different groups interpreting the same information in completely different ways. It also makes consensus difficult, if not impossible. It would be incomplete to discuss this story without acknowledging the role of commercial incentives. Controversy generates attention. Attention generates clicks, views, and engagement. And in the digital economy, engagement translates into revenue. This creates a powerful incentive for content creators, whether bloggers, video producers, or social media personalities, to highlight, amplify, and sometimes exaggerate controversial claims. That doesn't mean every piece of content is intentionally misleading, but it does mean that the system as a whole rewards visibility over verification. In such an environment, even a baseless rumor can become a profitable narrative. At its core, the LILIBET hoax narrative raises a fundamental question: where should the boundaries of public curiosity end? Public figures, by definition, invite a certain level of attention. Their actions, decisions, and statements are part of a broader cultural conversation. But their children occupy a different space. Children do not choose public life. They inherit it. Speculating about a child's identity, existence, or background moves the conversation into ethically complex territory. It shifts the focus from public accountability to personal intrusion. And once that line is crossed, it becomes difficult to redraw. As with many controversies driven by speculation, the future of this narrative is uncertain. It may fade, replaced by the next wave of headlines, or it may evolve, with new claims emerging and old ones resurfacing in different forms. What is clear is that, without credible evidence, the core question remains unanswered, not because the answer is hidden, but because the premise itself is unproven. For Harry and Meghan, the challenge will be the same as it has been since their departure from royal duties: navigating a world where every decision is interpreted, every silence is analyzed, and every story, true or not, has the potential to shape public perception. In the end, the LILIBET hoax narrative is not just about one claim or one family. It is a reflection of a broader cultural moment, one in which information is abundant, verification is uneven, and the line between public and private continues to blur. It asks us as observers to consider not just what we believe, but why we believe it. And perhaps most importantly, it reminds us that behind every narrative, no matter how sensational, there are real people whose lives are affected by the stories we choose to tell. By the time the LILIBET hoax narrative reached its third wave, it had already outgrown its origins. What began as scattered, unverified remarks had evolved into something far more complex, a story that no longer depended on evidence, but on momentum. Momentum is a powerful force in public discourse. Once a narrative gathers enough attention, it begins to sustain itself. New voices join in, not necessarily because they have new information, but because the conversation itself has become impossible to ignore. In this phase, the story stops being about what happened and starts being about what people think happened. For Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, this distinction matters, because in the court of public opinion, perception can carry as much weight as fact. One of the most unusual aspects of this controversy is the shifting burden of proof. Traditionally, those making extraordinary claims are expected to provide evidence. But in the fast-moving world of online discourse, that expectation often flips. Instead of asking, "Where is the proof?" and some audiences begin asking, "Why hasn't this been disproven?" It's a subtle but important shift. Disproving a negative, especially one based on speculation, is nearly impossible. It requires engaging with every variation of the claim, every reinterpretation, every new angle that emerges. And in doing so, it risks giving those claims more visibility than they might otherwise receive. This is the paradox Harry and Meghan face. Responding could fuel the story. Ignoring it allows others to define it. Even though Harry and Meghan have stepped back from formal royal duties, the legacy of the monarchy continues to shape how their lives are perceived. The British royal family has always operated within a carefully managed framework of image and tradition. Births, marriages, and milestones are typically marked by official announcements, public appearances, and a degree of ceremonial transparency. When Harry and Meghan chose a different path, one that prioritizes personal control over public access, they disrupted that framework. Their decisions reflect a modern approach to privacy, but they also challenge long-standing expectations. For some observers, that shift creates uncertainty, and uncertainty, in turn, creates space for speculation. Absence is rarely neutral in public life. When something or someone is not seen, questions arise. Not always fair questions, but persistent ones. In the case of LILIBET, the limited number of public appearances and images has become a focal point for those seeking to question the narrative. But absence can have many explanations. It can be a deliberate choice to protect a child's privacy. It can reflect logistical realities, personal preferences, or simply a desire to live outside constant observation. In an era where oversharing is common, choosing not to share can itself be a statement. Still, in the absence of context, others will create their own. Over the past few years, Harry and Meghan have built a communication strategy that blends openness with control. Through interviews, documentaries, and carefully curated releases, they have told their story on their own terms. This approach allows them to shape their narrative, but it also creates expectations. When they speak, audiences listen closely. When they don't, audiences speculate. It's a delicate balance. Too much transparency can invite intrusion. Too little can invite suspicion. Finding the middle ground is not just a public relations challenge, it's a personal one. Beneath the headlines and debates lies something less visible but equally important: emotion. Family estrangement, public criticism, and constant scrutiny take a toll. While much of the discussion focuses on facts and claims, the emotional reality of living under such conditions is often overlooked. For Meghan Markle, whose relationship with parts of her family has been publicly strained, the resurfacing of claims, especially those tied to personal milestones, adds another layer of complexity. For Prince Harry, who has spoken openly about the impact of media pressure on his own life, the situation may echo past experiences in ways that are difficult to articulate. These are not just public figures managing a narrative. They are individuals navigating deeply personal challenges in a very public space. At a certain point, stories stop being just stories. They become symbols, stand-ins for larger debates about trust, truth, and power. The LILIBET hoax narrative has, in some circles, taken on that symbolic role. For critics, it represents perceived inconsistencies. For supporters, it exemplifies the dangers of misinformation. In both cases, the specifics of the claim become secondary to what the story represents. This transformation makes resolution difficult, because even if the original claim is addressed or disproven, the underlying tensions remain. Journalists and content creators face a dilemma in situations like this. Ignoring the story entirely risks leaving the field open to less responsible voices. Covering it risks amplifying unverified claims. The challenge lies in finding a way to inform without inflaming, to provide context without contributing to confusion. Responsible reporting requires clarity about what is known, what is claimed, and what remains unproven. It also requires resisting the temptation to frame speculation as fact. In a competitive media environment, that restraint is not always easy. Part of what keeps this narrative alive is a simple human impulse: the desire for answers. People are naturally curious, especially when it comes to high-profile lives. When information feels incomplete, curiosity can turn into speculation. And speculation, repeated often enough, can feel like insight. But not every question has an answer that is publicly available. And not every answer, even if it exists, is owed to the public. Recognizing that boundary is part of navigating modern media consumption. If history offers any guidance, it's that controversies like this rarely define a legacy on their own. Royal history, and celebrity culture more broadly, is filled with moments of intense scrutiny that eventually fade into the background. What remains are the broader arcs: the decisions made, the values expressed, the impact over time. For Harry and Meghan, the long view will likely be shaped less by any single rumor and more by the life they build beyond it. That doesn't make the present moment any less challenging, but it does provide perspective. As the LILIBET hoax narrative continues to circulate, it exists in a space that is both highly visible and fundamentally uncertain. There is, as of now, no credible evidence to support the claim. There is, however, a complex web of factors, family dynamics, media ecosystems, public psychology that allows the story to persist. Whether it fades or evolves will depend on many things: the choices of those involved, the behavior of the media, and the willingness of audiences to question what they see and hear. Until then, the story remains what it has been from the beginning: not a confirmed revelation, but a reflection of the world that created it.